One of the advantages of working with 90-Second Website Builder is the safety and security that you have in knowing that your website files are safe. And here's why. Whenever you're building a website offline and then publishing a copy or generating a copy of that website to publish to the server, it means you always have your original source website files on your local computer. If you were building a website in an online platform, you don't have that advantage because your website files are always stored someplace else. But by building your website offline with software like 90-Second Website Builder, you have an extra measure of safety because, again, you always have those files. So if something happened to the server where your website is stored, if it were to crash, or if your web hosting account was to close or go out of business or whatever, you always have your original source files. That's a huge advantage of using the software. But in addition to that, there are some other features that make your files extra safe, and that is the backup features in 90-Second Website Builder. I want to show you how they work. If you go to the options icon up in the top menu here and click on that and bring up that window, you'll see there is a section just for backup. And I'll tell you how this works. Basically, 90-Second Website Builder makes backups of your project every time you save your project. And it stores those backups inside a backup folder, which you can designate. If you want to change that, you can. By default, it goes to 90-Second Website Builder /backups, but you can always change that location if you wanted to. If I click on this button, it'll take me to that location. You can also decide how many backups to store before it deletes the old ones and then continues with the backup count. I'll show you what that means here in a second. It's a little easier to understand if I can show you, but right now it's set to 4 and you'll see. Additionally, you can have the software backup even more often as you're working. Rather than having it backup every time you save, you can have the software backup every so many minutes. So if you're working on a big project and maybe you're afraid of your computer crashing, you could actually set the software to backup as often as every 5 minutes if you wanted to. Now, I leave mine on never. That doesn't mean it never backs up. That just means it never auto backs up. And you can decide what you want to do with that. But I'm fine with just my backups being saved up to 4 copies and being backed up only when I save my projects. Now, if you want to see the backups, there's a button right here we can click on that will show the backups in your system. Now, in my particular case, on this particular day, I have been working on some projects. So this particular project right here that you see has been backed up 4 times because that number was set to 4. That means on this date and this time, it backed up this project and called it the name of my project 01. And then it backed it up again when I saved later, a 3rd time, and then a 4th time. When I was working on that project and saved it a 5th time, what happened was the backup that was in position 1 got deleted and got moved, and the back in position 2 became position 1, 3 became 2, and 4 became 3, and the 5th one became 4. So in other words, it always keeps the 4 most recent backups and deletes the older ones so that you don't fill up your system, with 10, 20, even 100 backups. You would never need to do that. So leaving it set to 4 is pretty safe, although you can change that. So you can see that you have full control of how much you back up. And in addition to that, if I ever needed to restore this project, all I would have to do is come to the Backup Manager and click Restore. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. Let me close this and just remind you, the reason why we saw 4 is because I set the backup count to 4. I could change that if I wanted to. Now I'm going to close out of this. This is something that you just set and forget because you can leave it running in the background, and it's a good idea to. If something ever happened, you always have those that number of backups to go to if your computer was to have some kind of a mistake or somehow you lost your files. Let me show you one other thing. If you'll look up at the top menu here, you'll see there's actually a backup manager. That's another way to get to where we just were. If you are going to restore a website, obviously that website wouldn't be open because you would only be restoring it because it doesn't exist anymore. You think it doesn't exist anymore. I wouldn't be restoring this website. The one that's open right now doesn't need to be restored. So when you're restoring a backup, you would probably have a blank screen. Let's go to open from a new website, and then you would go to your backup manager and decide which one you would want to restore. And the way you do that, if I wanted to restore, say, that my most recent project here, which would be number 4, of course, I would simply click restore and be done with it. So it's actually very simple. It's something you don't really need to configure once it's set up. You might want to check it, or if you've never looked in there, it's a good idea to go to the options, click on backup, and just see what your backup is set at. If you want to make any changes, you can. Otherwise, just leave it to the default setting like this. You'll be good to go. And hopefully you won't have to use it. But if you do, it's good insurance that's built into your 90-second website builder software.